Yo, what's up, guys? Let me know if everything is good, man. Good to be back. Feels good to be back. Thank you, Brian. Let's see. Yeah, we got this good. What's up, Mr. Zuan? Good to see you, my friend. But all right, guys, a lot to cover. I missed out on a lot of good price action over the last couple of days. Some nice bullish structure on gold. That's funny. Yes, sir. Nah, literally. There's been some crazy nights. That's all I can say. Insane. What a life-changing event for sure. But all right, man, we're gonna get started in just a few, honestly, like a minute or so. We're gonna go over the dollar, gold, go over this price action. We want to see if, just from hindsight, if we're gonna be able to continue with these continued buys on gold, or we'll dive into the lower time frame, see if there's any sort of exhaustion, if price is gonna give signs of any sort of pullbacks. But again, we'll dive into those details in a few minutes. I just want to make sure everything is good. You know, the sound, the board. I want to be able to bring it back onto that board as well. You already know. You already know. But all right, good to see you guys all. All right, cool. So let's just go and start diving straight into the market structure of price here. So we'll go back onto the board, the legendary board itself, right? And again, the first thing that we see from hindsight is the price action on gold has been very bullish off of that important price point, which we talked about for a long time, which was more or less around those 4,000s. I'm not sure if you guys are able to see that right there. But again, if you guys remember over the previous streams that we were doing before I took that break, we were more so trading around this area where price action was starting to create this range and really failing to continue to push towards the downside, right? And now we understand the majority of the price action that came and pushed price down into those 4,000s was mainly because of the conflict going on with Iran, the US, everything going on in the Middle East, right? The rising in the energy prices. So again, because we didn't see, let's say, for example, any sort of major escalations later on, that's where you saw price action really failing to continue to push towards the downside. We didn't see inflation really, let's say, skyrocketing or getting out of control. So again, when we see that from a price action perspective, we saw that gold was, again, just failing to really push towards the downside, right? So now, when we understand that and we see that gold from a price action perspective was able to now, let's say, for example, let's zoom in a little bit more there. We started to break above these areas of interest right here. We started to see from an economic data perspective, CPI reports were not showing, again, higher inflation. If we were to actually look at the CPI reports, which we'll look at it later, if anything, again, we didn't see any sudden rise in inflation over the past couple of weeks or anything like that. So again, the translation which we've seen on gold, and we can start marking off the levels now, again, has been more of that bullish price action. So now looking at gold, let's start just by marking off the highs here on this daily price action. This is around the 4660s, more or less, around this area. But again, with gold right now, all we're seeing is very strong bullish structure. We already have an understanding as to why fundamentally we haven't seen any sort of downside and any sort of continuations towards the lows. So again, that explains why gold is a lot more bullish right now. We can also mark out just around this level here. Let's take out this magnet tool right now. And then we're gonna go on to the 4-hour and just quickly mark off some zones here. So again, We have right now very strong bullish structure. We're seeing a bit of exhaustion just around this area of interest, which we just marked out. So we want to make sure that, again, going back to what we've done previously in the same concepts, right now with the fundamental aspect not being more on the bearish side, and we're seeing such strong bullish price action, we want to see if we're able to continue to push towards the upside without seeing price action really breaking those lows. Because again, let's look at the price action. We've seen continuous highs with very minimal pullbacks, right? Like if I go like this and we look at this sort of structure on the 4-hour, again, that's minimal pullbacks. We're not seeing, for example, strong pullbacks or anything like that in terms of the market structure, right? So again, that's the same thing we want to continue to follow along. We also have another area of interest which we can mark out just around this area right here. So again, right now, looking at it from the fundamental perspective, daily time frame, 4-hour time frame, 1-hour time frame, everything is still pointing towards the bullish side. But again, we have price approaching these highs, which we want to make sure we're able to clear to look out for continuations and pushes towards the upside. And we have a clean area that we know if we are to, let's say, reject this zone, we can be more patient, wait for price to get back to this area of interest. Let's see, sorry about that. But basically right here, sure you guys can see that. And that's where we'll look out for continued buys as well. Wouldn't really look to adapt to price action. Welcome back to squiggly lines. Wouldn't really look to adapt to more selling price action unless price is really trading below these. This is like around the 46.20s, more or less, right? But let me know if you guys agree with that price action. Thank you guys for the messages. Very, very kind. I'm happy to be back. This is clean. This is clean price action, man. We did a quick little breakdown there, but I wanted to go a little bit more in depth into what I was talking about, right? Because again, we kind of just went over some information quickly. But now that we have, let's say, for example, our zones marked off, we have about 6 minutes until this 4-hour candle closes, which as of right now, still looking pretty strong. Looks like price action still continuing to push towards the upside. 1 hour as well is really just pushing into these highs. If we look at the lower time frames, right, the more we zoom in, again, we've seen some reactions just around these highs, the 46.60s. That's why we want to see those continuations and those pushes above this area of interest, right? The more that we zoom in, it gives us pretty much the same answer, right? Even this 5-minute price action getting into the zone, having those reactions really failing to push above. So that's why, again, we go to the same concept. It's kind of like on these lower time frames, it still looks bullish, but price action, almost you can say it's kind of like it's been just stuck within this area of interest, kind of like this range, more or less, you can say. So that's why it would become a lot more clear to look for those buys above this zone. That's why we're not going to be looking to force any sort of trades or any sort of buys if we see that price action is failing to really trade above this area. And then we're just going to do basically what we did there, which is rejection, price action, rejecting those highs, right? So we want to make sure we don't force any ideas. As of right now, even with this 5-minute candle that's just closed right now, still looks like price action, again, pushing towards the upside, not really showing us strong signs of pullbacks or anything like that. So again, we have about now another 5 minutes until this 4-hour candle closes. Let's see what we're going to get in terms of opportunities, man. Elijah, what's up, my friend? Let me get some water. Sorry, we have that marked off. I wanted to quickly go over something with you guys, just to kind of study price action. Let's call it to be a little bit more of nerds of the market here, right? So that way we can go over some education and talk about a few different concepts, let's say, and how they really tie into the market, right? And I'll try my best to really just kind of keep it on the simplified version, right? Without going too too much in depth, right? We don't want to get too, let's say, we don't want to lose focus of the current price action, right? So pay attention to price, be on the lookout for those continuations, or unless we get any sort of rejections, which again, as of right now, not seeing anything like that. But like I was mentioning earlier, if we are to, for example, look at the previous reports, let me see this. Let's do this month. Let me look at, I want to look for inflation reports. Let's look at these. So if we look at these reports and we look at, for example, this is the CPI reports, right? So we're looking at inflation reports and we're going to connect this to the price action that we saw previously, right? So remember at the beginning of this year, more or less, that's when the conflict with Iran and Israel, US, all of that started, right? That was around February, March, which if we look at price action and if we zoom out, that was more or less around these times, right? Right here. Ending of, yeah, basically end of February, beginning of March. That's when you had this big, strong move towards the downside on gold. Again, if we were to look back on that, that was really around the time where the conflict and everything started in the Middle East. When we look at the inflation around those times, you can say it was more or less controlled around the 2.6, 2.5s. You can see that right here, right? If you look at the percentage point right here, that was more or less what you saw. But after the conflict started, and that's when you started to see the rise in, well, sorry about that. That's when we started to see the rise in energy prices. This is, let me see, let me try to connect this. So again, February, March. In April, that's when we started to see a rise in inflation, again, with the connection with the rise in energy prices. When we look at the price action on gold, that's when we had these moves towards the downside as the dollar was gaining more dominance, right? So we had that correlation as well. If we look at, again, ending of February, beginning of March, you look at the dollar and gold correlation, you had very strong dollar pushing towards the upside. Again, at the same time that gold was pushing towards the downside. So again, you have that correlation, and that was the case for a few months. And again, you look at the inflation reports, higher inflation in April. In May, you had higher inflation. June, you had higher inflation. But as the conflict continued, let's say, excuse me, as the conflict continued and we did not see any sort of more escalations, you didn't see gold continuing to push below those 4,000s. When you look at the inflation reports later on, in July, for example, now you didn't see inflation rising like that or anything that, let's say, was out of the expectations, right? You didn't see it like in the 3% or anything like that, right? You actually saw it go back to 2.6. You saw it go back to the 2.5, right? When you look at that and you look at the correlation with gold and the same thing with dollar and those same events, look at gold failing to break those 4,000s and having a push towards the upside. Same time that you look at dollar and it was failing to break these highs, look at the push that it had towards the downside, right? In terms of, again, connecting the events with the price action, so you're able to follow along a lot more, let's say, with more ease, right? With a little bit more clarity, how I like to say, right? So you had dollar very clearly pushing towards the downside. Again, with gold, that correlation, very, very strong, right? So you can really say over the past couple of days, using those same technical concepts, understanding the same fundamental ideas, again, you see as to why it has been almost, let's just call it, in hindsight perspective at least, with gold, easy to follow in terms of the price action, right? Again, look at this daily time frame, just strong continuous moves. You could say, for example, again, this zone, as you're following along, using the same concepts, you have an understanding as to, again, where this price need to break below for you to have pullbacks, or where do you need to stay above for you to have continuations? Where do you need to break above to have further continuations, which is exactly what we're doing right now, right? Same thing that you did around these days, these past couple of days, it's the same thing that we're going to be able to do right now. So now, again, a little bit more of a breakdown and deep dive into the price action of gold. And it's always interesting to see when you zoom out And you have, again, gold moving towards the downside so strong during the same days that dollar was also pushing towards the upside so strong, right? So again, when you have an understanding of those correlations and to, again, how it really reacts to the same events, again, it gives you a little bit more of a peace of mind when you're trading, and when you have those confluences in your favor, you can say. But all right, 4-hour time frame closed this candle. Let's look at this again. Very, very strong as of right now. Really not much to say when we look at this 4-hour, other than we had a strong bullish candle closure. We have the 1-hour, same thing, bullish candle closure, again giving us still reactions around this zone of interest. But as of right now, the more that we zoom in, pretty much everything is still more on the bullish side. Maybe this 30 minutes is showing a little bit of a slowdown at this area of interest, but again, pretty much the same answer everywhere that we go. 15-minute time frame, still on the bullish side in terms of, like, again, highs, higher lows. We have highs, higher lows. Right now, price action still attempting to create new highs. So again, we have plenty of room to continue to push towards the upside. We just know where we need to remain objective around these areas of interest. Let's actually mark out basically just around these highs that price action is approaching right now. Let's do this to make it more simple. Just gonna mark out the current area. All right, let's be on the lookout for that. Let me look at something. But anyways, over the past couple of weeks, how have you guys been? It feels like for me, at least, it honestly feels like I wasn't even gone. And these past couple of days absolutely flew by. I've gotten maybe like a few hours of sleep. I don't know if you can tell. But man, what a crazy couple of days it's been. How have you guys been? How has your trading been? How did you guys I'm not sure actually, but I'm sure to whoever was able to join the last couple of days, I'm not sure if you guys were able to see Max, but Max is the one that I was telling you guys about, that he does very clean breakdowns of NAS and stuff like that. He's a really good trader, man. But how did you guys enjoy those breakdowns? I honestly was not able to join a lot of those breakdowns. I tried to be as active as I could with, like, the markets and things like that, but it's been hectic. That's all I can say. Let's see, price action. And price is struggling a little bit here. Let's see. Get some water. All right, let's pay attention to price. Right now, also on these lower time frames, the more we zoom in, again, how we were talking about earlier, this is one of those days that it's just kind of hard to go against the bias. Holding this gold like a little puppy. Yeah, I mean, again, it's in hindsight, there is not much to say other than, again, very bullish, price is gonna go up, right? But the more you do a deep dive into it, and the more you look at the prices and the behavior of the price action, again, just look at the price itself, right? Look at the candles itself and look at the behavior and the size of the candles, right? You see, for example, when price action is going to be, or not going to be, but when you see price action, let's say stuck and kind of struggling in terms of like no strong continuations, you have strong pullbacks, you have failure to really continue to break, let's say, for example, intraday highs, and then you have price action doing pullbacks, right? That's why it's always good to prepare and be aware of what price may do, right? So you're not extremely married to like one bias or one idea. But again, same thing applies when you're looking at price action, give you these clues, right? When you have strong price action, strong candles with minimal pullbacks, right? Same thing that you're seeing right now, right? So you want to be able to understand and kind of like differentiate the different behaviors of price. So that way you know when you have maybe more confluences or maybe less or not so favorable conditions in your favor, right? You got to understand the different market environments really, right? So again, daily, 4 hour, 1 hour, really everything that we're looking at in terms of, again, same thing, marking off the levels, looking at the behavior of price. Sure, the more you zoom in, the more you see price action, maybe you could say struggling, and not just maybe like how you have this view on this daily time frame that it's just kind of like continuous pushes towards the upside. But when you have a view of the 1 hour, you see that price does has it has its little dips, and it has price action gives you its pauses before you have these continuations, right? Maybe some pause, continuation, right? When I say pause, I mean a high being created, a pullback, but a healthy pullback, and then before you have that continuation, right? That's what I mean when I say pause. Right now, price action, you really had the same thing, right? You had price action creating basically new highs, giving you a pause in price action, maybe slowing down. Right now, we're in that phase that we're starting to see the initial phase, you can say, of the continuation, right? That's why we're following along with pretty much every time frame, 15-minute included, 5-minute included, everything. Again, just continuous pushes towards the upside. The 1 minute, same thing right now. The 1 minute is actually creating pretty clean structure, you can say, in terms of like breaking out of this area with a new high, minimal pullback, new high, minimal pullback. So again, as we're following price, you can say at this moment, if we're gonna follow this momentum and this price action, and we look at this, let's say for example, like with this view, you basically have, again, your high being created, price action basically kind of creating that rejection point, sort of consolidating. And again, this is like on the lower time frames. This is the 1 minute. So again, kind of creating, you can say, a bit of an order block on these lower time frames. That's why the idea is simple. Again, continued pushes above this area. We have price action now creating for us clean structure on the lower time frames. You can say it's these lows that ideally price action, if let's say for example we're going to do a pullback, well, ideally we don't really break and trade back below this zone of interest. So when we look at price action, we know we're just following basically, I don't know if you guys can see that, let me remake that, but basically what I'm saying is this. If we're looking at price action, again, if we're following momentum and we want to see more confluences in our favor, when we look at the technical price action and what we're looking at right here, again, we have basically this low. So we know it's below here. That price action, if it really breaks below and starts to trade below that, that's where you're trading below a structure point on the lower time frames, but also more importantly, you're trading back below your zone and your area of interest, right? Your price point. So that's an area of interest that we know we want to remain above if we do a pullback. And then we want to make sure we continue obviously to break those highs and then the story goes on in terms of like what we're following through, right? Right now, again, still looks pretty clean because we're trading above our zone of interest, which is basically above these highs. You're seeing a clean breakout. You're seeing, I would say, decent behavior on the bullish side. This is already from the 69s. This is about to be about 50 or 60 pips, more or less, in terms of like price action, really trading, let's call it above your area of interest, right? With all the confluences that we're talking about. In other words, definitely no signs of sellers right now. Let's see. I mean, are any of you in buys right now? Other than, I'm assuming, Clay. I bet Elijah is in the trade. That guy doesn't miss out on a trade. I know Elijah doesn't miss out on a trade. Let me see. No trades right now. It's all good. Still early, man. Still early. We still have NYSC. That's going to be in about, NYSC open will be in about 17 minutes. Which reminds me, today we're going to stick to gold. We're going to stick to gold. Let's get back into the rhythm. Let's get back into the flow of how we do things. So far, so good, right? In terms of price action, because again, we want to understand what we're doing, right? We're looking at probabilities. We're looking at price action. We're looking at technical confirmations, right? We have an idea and a fundamental narrative always, but again, we want to make sure we understand what it is that we're doing. Which, by the way, reminds me, were you guys following along when I was talking about the inflation reports and kind of like why that ties along to the current bullish price action that we're seeing on gold? Because again, I know I kind of like just go over that really quickly and just kind of like do a overview of it, assuming the majority you understand. But if you guys have any questions, just please let me know. We have plenty of time. You guys know we go for a good amount of time. Thank you, my friend. Thank you. It's good to be back. I'm not gonna lie. It's you know what's funny? I'll confess. Today was literally, it has to be like the first day I got like a good 4 hours like straight of sleep. You know? I'm not gonna lie. It's been crazy. A lot of people warned me, I will say. A lot of people warned me of what I was about to go through. But yeah, it got me on the chin. Got caught with a clean left right hook. Let me see, Elijah. I'm kind of waiting. I want a retest of those highs. Okay. I'm waiting. It's all good. What does drawdown mean? Drawdown is basically what you're losing out on. Your current loss or your potential loss, right? So for example, I'll give you an example. If you were looking to take long positions above the 4670s, right? Let's say above these highs right here. You would have wanted, let's say, for example, I don't know, let's call it just, again, this is just a hypothetical. It's just an example. Let's call it a quick scalp, a break of high with your stop loss just below this area. You're looking for a quick one-to-one. Excuse me. You're looking for a quick one-to-one. Your potential drawdown, right? Your potential loss would be this right here, right? This area, which means if price would have pulled back, that would have been your potential drawdown and your potential loss versus potential profit, which would have been obviously in the greens here. Thank you for that question. I hope I was able to answer that correctly. All right, let's see. 15-minute time frame, closing nice. Closing nicely. We're closing nice above our area of interest. Again, we have our different zones that we have marked off. Let me really look at this. Yeah, I would say this is a decent zone, right? I don't want to go and overanalyze this and say, oh, if price is going to pull back, watch out for this area. Like, okay, if we're going to be trading below this zone, am I going to be in a trade anyways? Probably not, right? So I'm not really going to be too worried about analyzing where price is going to stop if we break below here, right? So if we get some sort of opportunities later on and I have to mark off this area, sure. But as of right now, we're not, I don't think we're too worried about that. I would say we're more worried, or we're more on the lookout for this low right here, which is the breakout above this range and above this price point. You could say the retest, which is pretty aggressive, and the continuation, right? So you could say that again. That's why we were talking about that earlier. A pullback into this area and a rejection, not bad. That wouldn't be too bad. That could still be clean, bullish structure. Nothing you can say out of the ordinary. But below that, don't want to be too involved. Again, below that, we would go back into basically this range. Am I going to trade, or let's say bet, you can say on a buy if price is trading back below here, where you've had, again, the study of price action, where you've seen price rejecting, or let's say strong sellers below that zone, again, below this zone, below this zone. I'm not going to be in that, right? This doesn't make sense. Kane, okay, I'm glad. My friend Clay, thank you for asking, man. I hope everyone is doing great as well. It's all good. I know what you guys are thinking. It's all good. We just follow along, step by step, level by level. Level by level. Let me see. All right, fine. All right. Let's see. We'll go over US 30. If you guys insist, I got you. I got you. We'll do top-down analysis. And we'll keep it strictly on that note. Just pay attention to gold as well, to whoever's trading gold. Let's actually leave gold here. Leave it alone. We know what we're looking for. We know what we're waiting for. We have... All right, let's go like... All right, so let's do some quick top-down analysis on US 30. So when we're looking at US 30, in my opinion, this is still pretty bullish because of the fact that you have, again, just look at the main price points and the main structure points, right? You have, for example, this is a high. This is obviously the most recent low that got created. In terms of what we're looking at here, that's pretty clear to me, right? If we just draw it out, we just follow the price points of interest, right? In terms of highs, where you have your lows and your strong buyers or sellers stepping in. Again, pretty bullish structure. But right now, off of these highs, right, if we want to mark that off and get technical, we're seeing very clearly bearish momentum and a pullback against that bullish structure, right? But again, as of right now, it's still pretty bullish in terms of like the macro timeframes. So we want to make sure we don't forget that as we do a dive deeper into the current price points, excuse me. So we have these highs to mark out. Let's just do this quickly. These lows. So again, on the daily time frame, we understand that from a macro perspective, sure, we're on the bullish side with price action right now doing pullbacks, and you can see that behavior a lot more clearly on the 4 hour, right? Because on the 4 hour, it's not like the daily, right? The daily was more so, again, the more you zoom out, the more you look at that, again, clear high, low, right? So it still looks bullish. But when we zoom in and we look at, for example, the 4 hour, the pullback structure and the pullback phase that price action is in right now is pretty clear, in my opinion. And it looks like we have some sort of price point of interest just around the area we're trading at right now. But I just kind of quickly wanted to go over that. And again, on the 4 hour, a little bit more clear in terms of what we're following. We have a low, high, clear, low, high, right? So in terms of this price action, already having an understanding of what the daily looks like below the 53,300s, which is this area on US 30, we should be on the lookout for continued sells below that zone, right? We shouldn't really be on the lookout for any sort of buys unless price is trading above this area, which again, if we look at the past, look at this zone right here, again, even if it was a minor reaction, it still was a good enough of a reaction to bring price action to, let's say, a minor pause before this very strong breakout, right? When you look at the price action here and you have, for example, price doing a pullback, you have rejections here, more rejections there, and obviously price action doing, for example, this. Let me be more clear, actually. Look at this pullback. Price did a pullback, rejection, rejection. Again, you have this high being created, this new low that gets created. Price action does this pullback. Now you have these highs that have been created here, rejections. So it's below that zone that we know we're seeing right now, price action. Clearly, sellers interacting and still, let's say, for example, dominating below that zone of interest. Again, that's on US 30. Let me know if that's clear. I'm sure that's pretty clear. I'm not gonna lie. I thought I was gonna be rusty, but that's spot on in terms of analysis right there. But all right, now we zoom in a little bit more. The 1 hour. 1 hour, we can mark off this low. It's pretty clear. Pretty clear. You're kind of in a bit of a choppy area right now, you can say. Now that we're zooming into the 1 hour. The 1 hour, ideally, you can say you trade below that zone right here because of the fact that you had price action. Look at this, for example. You have a sell-off, a retest, let's say buyers really failing to push price above there, and then sellers continue to dominate. So it's this price point of interest that ideally you trade below. And historically, in terms of the price action that we look at here, we've seen sellers stepping in there. The more we do a dive deeper into price action, you have price going into this area, minor reaction before breaking above and retesting and then staying above that zone. So there was basically the opposite of what took place at this zone right here, right? So again, just so you're able to understand the different interaction and you're able to connect it to the probabilities in terms of what you're looking out for trades, right? So that's why when we look at price action right now, we need to pay attention to the fact that we do have price trading above this zone. You could say it's a bit of a choppy zone, more or less around this area. But as of right now, because we understand that price is having strong reactions off this zone, we're seeing price action, for example, creating this new low. This is the low that we want to make sure, excuse me, that we break below, and we don't want to stay above that area, so we don't have this take place, which would be, again, price action trading above this price point of interest, and buyers continue to push price back into these highs. We want to remove that probability, which is why we want price to break below. And that way we do basically maybe this, right? Or this, something like that. That should make perfect sense. That's on point right there. Spot on. Let's see if we do a little bit more of a deep dive. 30-minute as well, right? Let's see that. When we have the 30-minute, this looks even, you can say, a little bit cleaner because you have price action on this side. Now let's go back to the board, man. Let's go back to the board. That way we can be clear about this. Again, on one side, let's say on one side of this picture, again, bullish structure clearly before you have price action really failing to break these highs. You have price creating these lows, right? So you can say price action at this moment, let's say if we were to remove this price action, clearly on the bullish side, right? That's what it was following. That's the momentum that it was on. But then you have price action pause, failing to break above and create new highs, right? So let's keep that in mind. And now you've had from these highs that you needed to break above, price actually went and broke below, meaning you're seeing that kind of that shift in that momentum. You've created new lows, which is, again, it connects back to this same price point of interest that we're looking at. So that's why, again, more ideas still align with sells back below that zone. So we're basically following rejections, the change of the structure and momentum that we're seeing here on this 30-minute time frame. That's why we want to make sure that price is obviously not trading back at these highs and ideally trading below these lows. So again, you have further probabilities on your sell side. That's why we need to break those lows, basically. It goes back to obviously the same type of idea, the sells below that zone. In my opinion, buys really wouldn't, not that it wouldn't make sense, but it would just make more sense if you have buys take place, I would say back above here at least, to retest these highs. But it's not really the strongest range. So I would say at this point, it really would be more ideal to wait for buys above here. Above the 53,300. That way it's clear. Okay, price action already attempted to create new lows. It attempted to sell off. It bounced off of this low and it couldn't get below that area. You've now seen the rejection and price action trading above this zone. Okay, that's clear. Follow that and look out for those continued buys. But that's above in this area. Let me know if you guys would agree with that. I think that makes a lot more sense. And again, that would add just more probabilities, right? That way you're not just aggressively trying to switch back and forth between ideas. That's, you want to make sure you have strong probabilities in your favor. You're not just kind of like going back and forth between trades. Oh gosh. Basically what I'm trying to say, you don't want to be going back and forth between trade ideas. You want to make sure you have strong probabilities on whatever side that you want to look to take advantage of, right? That's why when we break down these ideas, we break down in depth what we want to see, right? What we need to see, but also what could go against that, you know? You get what I'm saying? But all right, we're seeing the pushes above the zone with the initial volatility on US 30. Let's pay attention, right? That's the initial volatility. We want to make sure that price action, let's say it settles and it cools off and you fail to break above these 300s, these 53,300s, that sell idea below this zone is still not invalid. So it's above those 53,300s that we want to make sure we have those continuations take place. Let's see this. Let's look at this on the lower time frames. As of right now, we're seeing price attempting to do that. And still, this Zwan is back. Zwan is back, killing US 30. Let's look at this. We're seeing that strong reversal above the 53. What was this? 53,250s more or less. Now reacting just around those 300s. Let's see if these initial candles on the initial opening of NYSE, we could see a push above the 300s. That's funny. That's so funny, Zoan. That's hilarious. All right, but we're looking at US 30. That's clean above the 300s. This is your next area of interest on US 30. Really, I would say around the 53,500s is your next area of interest, which is basically these highs right here. I'll say you could probably break above these 400s, no problem. And then with gold, let's see, gold right now is having the retest and the, you can say price action kind of maintaining and settling above the 70s, which is basically these highs that you broke above this price point. So you have, again, price action creating new intraday highs around the 46.77s. We're seeing price action kind of, again, just kind of maintaining and settling above that. We want to make sure we see price continuing above that without really seeing still the same break below these 60s here. I would say we're still on that same idea. Let me see. Just monitoring something, just looking at something. Give me 1 second, guys. All right. All right, cool. So let me see this one. I didn't even have time to set my take profits. I always take 50 pips on open, and she didn't even give me a chance. Had to settle for 100. My bad. Now, come on, man. 100. That's in 100 and like you failed to say in like 30 seconds, bro. In like 30 seconds. So you're already on both ends, I would say. If it would have sold off, I'm sure you would have gotten a quick 100 pips from that one as well, man. But all right, gold, watch out for gold as it's breaking. Obviously, you want to see those continuations above. You have a nice clean closure on these lower time frames as well. Still no sort of, let's say, signs of price doing pullback on gold. So let's just monitor that. And then with US 30, let's see if it can settle and if it can aggressively aggressively retest this area, these 53,300s, stay above, and then we break these highs, and then we can have that strong push. That's what I would say would be the game plan with US 30. Again, same thing like I was saying earlier. In terms of the sells and that idea, at this point, still is going to be below this area of interest. You wanna always make sure you have an idea of what's a good trade to take, what's not a good trade to take, right? So that way you're not too worried about every sort of movement that price does, you know? Because if you're too worried about that, you're always going to be worried about what is price going to do next. And if you're always thinking about that, you're always going to be thinking with like that mentality of like, I need to take a trade, you know? And we already understand that when you have that sort of mentality with trading, you can get into those tilt moments, you can really say, where you lose control, you let emotions, you know, really take control of your trading, and that's not ideal, you know. Remember what I'm here for. I'm here to remind you and to hold you accountable, right? And again, it's a good reminder so that way you're not back and forth switching ideas and getting stressed and kind of like, oh man, is price going in my favor? And a lot of times, something that we failed to also look at times, you're gonna see that price action. Let's say you're in that gambling mode and you're like going crazy with the trades and you're just over trading. Let's say as of right now, if you were to be over trading, there's gonna be some days that like price action is doing one thing so clearly that it's like if you go on that side, let's say you can say it's gonna be hard to lose, right? But then there's gonna be those days where price action, let's say you're looking for a breakout, and let's say you're on tilt and you're just trading emotional, and you're just revenge trading and things like that. And price action may not even do this breakout. Price action may just get to this zone, catch you by surprise, and it catches you, let's say, emotional. You take a trade, you take a big risk, and again, you're just doing something because you don't even have a clear idea of what you're doing. And price action ends up rejecting and it just goes completely against you. You get what I'm trying to say? So that's why you always want to have an idea of what exactly it is that you're looking for and what exactly it is that you're waiting for. So that way you know step by step what you want to see, what's ideal, what's not, and you know how to defend yourself or how to really, let's say, take advantage of the market, you know? So US 30, we're monitoring that again. It's above the 300s that you want to see price stay above. As of right now, retest is pretty clean. You know it's above this area that you obviously want to go and break above. So again, further add probabilities that price is likely going to go and continue to push towards these highs. Again, without you assuming these things, you have the proof in front of you. You know exactly what needs to take place for that to really happen. And then with gold, same thing. Gold right now, let me see, we have about 6 minutes, right? I lost the timer. About 6 minutes until this 15-minute time frame, excuse me, closes. We know exactly where we ideally stay above, where we continue to trade above. Same thing when we look at all these lower time frames, right? We had a minor breakout above here, but it didn't really hold before you had basically a flush back below into this zone of interest, right? Let's see, we have gold, US 30. Pretty clear, pretty clear. All right, let's see, what do we have? Still above the clear zone. This is still going to be the main zone that gold, let's say for example, can't or should not be breaking below. Anything above that, still pretty much in the clear. right, let's see. US 30. All right, let me see. Sorry, got lost. But we can mark off these new highs. It's basically same idea with gold. US 30, we're basically at this zone, so we don't even need to mark that off. We visually understand where we need to break above. Okay, other than that, let's just watch that. Pretty clear. Instant 100 TP. That's funny, man. Now we're seeing a little bit of a pushback here off of these highs. We have the 15-minute time frame closing soon. Again, as long as we're not really engulfing back below this zone here, I would say structure is still pretty clear, but it's once you really get below that zone that you start to see more signs of stronger selling coming in, let's say. Other than that, we're pretty good. Because this is what we're following here, right? The highs, lows, highs, lows, highs. 4660s. All right, we have one more, actually about a few more seconds until the 15-minute closes. All right, yeah, with the 15-minute candle closing back below here, that's where we want to be more cautious in terms of those buy ideas above the 60s on gold. So again, let's remain cautious of that. And then with US 30, although we did have a close above, we still have to be on the lookout for the same idea pretty much with that one. Still same breakout, kind of like the same idea as of gold. We have the highs that we know we need to break above, and then we have the price point of interest that as long as we're not trading below that area, we're still on the clear for that possibility. But below that zone, that's where you can see possible pullbacks. Same thing with gold, right? Below this zone of interest, that's where you can see possible pullbacks. It still leaves us with the same zone, again, above the 60s, that we need to be trading above, and then eventually above these 60, you can call it the 680s, the 4680s on gold. That's where you need to be trading above for you to have those further continuations, right? So again, that way you can take it step by step and you know exactly what you're looking at without having to assume or marry any sort of idea. But all right, we'll watch price action for a little bit longer, guys. Let's watch with gold that it's trading back below here. We don't, I would say in terms of like those buys, we would have to be extremely more cautious of that. Again, above, it has to really be above the 60s. Then with US 30, okay, with US 30 is giving that cleaner breakout, you can say. Let me just monitor that. US 30 is having a nice push. Even gold, I'm seeing it going back above strong. But US 30 is pretty much, well, I want 53,500 is more the price point that I think it could reach before maybe having the strong pullbacks. But let's see, we're pretty much around that price point, which was just around this area. We're more so targeting the highs, the 53,500s. Or that's where we could see maybe some pushback or maybe a minor pause. And then with gold had a quick snapback in price action here. But again, still same areas of interest. So let's just be cautious there. Let me just make sure something good here. Yeah, what a strong push on US 30 above those 300s. Also on the lower time frames too, right? The clean little break retest and breakout above. Not bad. Not bad US 30. Gold is the one that got a little bit choppy because you had an attempt to break out, then a strong pullback, and even price really breaking below your price point of interest. But then looking literally recovered in like the same amount of time, right? Basically just canceled out that move because you had a pullback and then price pushing right back above that area, right? That's where I was saying earlier with US 30, sometimes with price action, you wanted to trade clean above or below a certain area of interest, and you have this take place, right? Where it's like a quick breakout and then it pulls back and it gets back above that area, right? Whereas with US 30, it was kind of just like the breakout, holding and retesting, clean continuation, right? No signs of the pullback below the zone, right? So gold a little bit choppy there in terms of like the price movement. Still decent, but again, not extremely optimal, let's just say. But all right, guys. I think we're nearing the end of the stream. Not bad. Not bad for our first day back. We will be back, of course, Monday through Friday. If you guys see that maybe I missed one day, just have some patience. But I can guarantee we're back. We'll be here pretty much every single day. Remember, it's Monday through Friday, unless there's like some sort of holiday or something happens, but we're mostly here pretty much every single day. Yeah, we want to make sure we don't miss out on the rest of the year. We have some good opportunities here. But all right, US 30 having a bit of a reaction around these highs. Again, gold just kind of messing about around this area of interest. I would say be on the lookout with gold as it continues to trade below this zone. If it does that, that's where I can see those pullbacks take place with gold. But anything above that zone, you're still in the clear for those continued buys. You just also want to make sure you break above these highs. So I think pretty clear with US 30 and gold here. Unless anybody has any more questions, I think, guys, we can call it a day. We can call it a stream. It's very, very good to be back. I appreciate you guys for being here and for being patient over these past couple of days. I hope you guys were able to trade good as well, right? With composure, you guys were able to do clean analysis, take some good trades, stayed patient. Got into some sells from the 73s. Okay, Elijah, going a bit on the high risk. You know, for Elijah, if you're in those sells, you know where you need to break below for you to have those continuations. That way you don't stay married on to a trade. But yeah, guys, now thank you guys. Thank you guys for giving me your time. All right, guys. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Again, thank you guys for being here. Watch out for gold. Watch out for US 30. You guys know exactly what to be on the lookout for. So yeah, we'll call it a stream and I will see you guys tomorrow. Take care, guys.